Right. So basically, I'm really honoured to be chatting with you, and we've kind of struck up quite a connection in a short space of time. We met through the Academy of Professional Dialogue originally,
Hmm.
I think,
Okay.
and then a few other areas where we're both interested in, and a few conversations and group meetings and stuff. And I was just like reflecting on preparation for a kind of a interview sort of conversation, but there are so many avenues to what we've touched on over the ether that I really don't know where to start. So I just thought, okay, well, let's just start in the present, and whatever's coming up. I'm pretty sure that from the conversations that I've had with you, that well, we're interested in communication per
Hmm.
se, and presence, and liveness, interrelations, what's going on in the moment. That's the whole legacy of dialogue anyway. Generating meaning together. So I don't know where we could start. Perhaps just from your point of view, the any launching point, just
I think from
background.
my point of view, why I felt honored, or just the idea that you're doing interviewing and you're also interested in dialogue, and not to mention that I think we've already gravitated also on some ideas on spiritual presence, or on other things. Yet I wouldn't say we know each other, but and I know, of course, also assumed some of this interview is about your work in autism dialogue, or at least uh, neurotyping or understanding
Yeah,
neurodiversity. I
yeah.
guess that's where one is flattered, because I guess I feel like quite a typical, or I'm just this guy, like, and then it's nice that I feel like, or I feel it's interesting to explore. Then why have we been attracted to similar things, or what is it? And so I guess I'll just approach this as a two guys that is trying to figure out, get to see one another. So the interview for me then, which is coincidentally something that I'm working on currently for my company, an
Yeah.
interview process for recruitment, but just to look at interview again as a dialogue, right? Because too much, it has often been looked at as one person is supposed to ask the questions and the other person is supposed to answer them. But the of interview is again the in between, and that was kind of interesting, because it is actually making me think of, we want to get insight into the relational space, the in between space between you and me, and between anything, but we're now here. So, and that becomes, then interesting. So at the moment when I'm hearing interview, I'm thinking, okay, what is it that's in between us? How do, and looking at how we relate to the world, and we can of course find a topic to kind of focus it down. How do we relate to um, dialogue, or which I see, and that's why I'm interested in dialogue, is a very relational process, or non-duality, as I know sometimes is coming up for you, or silence. So, but the very idea of interview, I just wanted to bring that present also, is for me of interest, to say, how do I frame a conversation so that we can gain insight into our relationships,
Mm. Yeah.
and like what your project's about. And I thought, like, wow, that then I have to say yes.
Thanks, Johann. So yeah, I'll respond to that with a tiny bit of background. Yeah, absolutely agree. And from my position, I think neurodiversity is a key to unlocking some of the universal concerns about communication, because it's in the word itself. And I love that you've touched upon the breaking down of words as in interview, and brings to mind dialogue, which has got so many wrong connotations, interpretations. Um, and a mutual friend of ours, Jackie, came up, I think almost inadvertently, she came up with the word interlog, because she was just referring to this other group, was and she came out as interlog, and I thought it was a beautiful word. And I thought, right,
Mm,
I'm going to capture that.
mm,
Um, So yeah, can you just give us a little bit more context and background about you, your life, your work, what brought you to this point, and what you're doing at the moment, please?
Hmm. Um,
If
yeah,
that's
so background triggers an aspect of storytelling and sense making, which is an interest also of mine, but it's um, I hope is complementing the interest of dialogue and presence, which is my actual interest in meditation, merely as a meditator, not as a professional or anything, as a novice meditator. I actually see dialogue also as a form of social meditation. That's at least my approach to dialogue as an extension of whatever that project of contemplation is in my life. Um, it's supposed to, for me at least, balance out this identity formation and storytelling on the other side. So just personally, um, I guess maybe it was as the pandemic hit. I was first a filmmaker, so I have a filmmaking background, but I liked the idea of being open and explorative. Even when I was making films, I was making unwatchable films for the pure reason that I was trying to get a film to have a life of its own, which is grueling for actors because then there's no script and we're trying to figure it out as we go along. And what I realized is I was already getting my hands dirty, so to speak, with facilitation, or because I noticed that it was actually the crew, it was actually being live on the film sets that as we explored what to do next in uncertainty,
great.
which was where the magic was happening for me. And
Have
of
you got
course,
any uh, formal training or even education in
yeah,
creative?
I've got a bachelor's in filmmaking where I
Right.
specialized in cinematography and in
Yeah.
camera and in writing and directing.
Yeah, that's so
Um,
interesting convergence because I did in my fine art degree, the thing that fascinated me the most, apart from dialogue I was introduced to in my final year, was live art
oh, live
and
art and
yeah, live art. So
what is help me a little bit out a little bit of what live art is because
it's
it
more
maybe
about
sounds very
pres.
similar. Yeah,
Yeah, it's more about presence. So you think of Marina Abramovich,
oh yes, yeah,
who sat in the Museum of Modern Art in New York
yeah,
for a few days. People queued up and just sit opposite her and
yeah,
look
yeah.
into her eyes. That's it. That was the art. It's live art. It's about presence.
Do you
I
distinguish
got it.
between performance art, because I've often heard it as
Yeah,
performance art, but live art sounds cooler. I like that because it's
yeah,
performance has other connotations also again to it.
yeah, yeah. Well,
I
there you
like the
go.
live
Yeah,
art. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
It's in the word. I think.
yeah. Nice.
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
good thing to
Yeah.
unpack.
So yeah, live art, life and live as art.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of still very present for me.
And creativity is an essence is
Oh
what dialogue is in essence is thought and language
yeah,
as the tools and the medium.
yeah, absolutely. And I
Yeah.
sometimes feel it's missing. So in when I now turn to dialogue as a more let's say a contemplative means of trying to understand what's going on,
Mm.
because I feel like we can't do it just by ourselves. So I can also sit alone and meditate, but even that, it makes sense. Then you would have had a teacher or something that would take you through that, so that some kind of conversation can take place. Since I don't particularly have a teacher in that realm, I probably have many teachers, but not a one specific that I could go physically to. Dialogue has become very central, and maybe that's a part of my makeup that I also wonder about. Is it that am I so attracted to dialogue for its kind of like we're speaking on eye level, lack of hierarchy often in that kind of conversation? Is it speaking to my rebellion that I actually almost never wanted a teacher either? So I don't want to be somebody else's teacher, but I guess I'm really comfortable of the mutual exploration process.
Yeah,
Yet
great. Well,
as you go older, there is definitely people that constantly can teach you something. So I don't know what my distaste of authority and
yeah,
or gurus and all these kind of things. I have a kickback against it,
great.
but at least not to the detriment of learning, which I then just
Yeah,
like to do in groups and dialogue and so forth. But to bring the creativity
yeah,
back, that's what I'm missing now. So I had of course a lot of that in the filmmaking, or even in the storytelling realm. It's just that it's I, how to bring it back so you can be reflective also, which you can do well in dialogue, and you can slow things down in the dialogue process. And so to find now a meeting ground where I can be reflective, but not too much where your reflective is causing you not to really go on a magical voyage of your imagination also, like, because you could, on one sense, when you're doing active imagination, for example, you really just, you try and see where the images take you, and they often don't make any sense. And if you want things to make sense, which some people in dialogue want to, so they want to share meaning and they want to kind of like, okay, cool, hold on, let's talk about that. It could also take you out of that almost whatever process you were down, discovering this imagery, like that is just coming forth if you can stay with them and actively even play with them. So I'm still trying to figure those two out. How can they can really play together in an interesting way?
Is that to do with context and how's this playing out in your professional life? Because I do see a distinction between personal and professional life, and in dialogues, for example, we work with the community, which is directly with members of the public, and in organizational contexts and settings where there's a completely different remit and dynamic with the container.
Yeah, so professionally and personally, they come together for me in one word, and that's been centered around integrity. So it's been the biggest thing for me, most likely because I feel I lack it, not because I think I have it and I'm like, oh, look at me. So it makes sense when I'm attracted to even in dialogue circles, that I was attracted to Bohm specifically, who often talks about wholeness, and he wouldn't use integrity as per se much, but everything. If you also look at integrity's meaning, for me, the first meaning is actually undivided and whole. It's only the second meaning that is congruent to your moral principles. And it's bringing those two together that I find so interesting in that term. And so Bohm would often speak a lot about wholeness and how to approach finding coherence and so forth. And that would be his words. And I find a lot of solace and meaning in those. So I guess it's the fragmentary state that I'm interested in, and how to bring them together, like, so professionally, and then of course personally. So I would be, even professional terms, how do you bring more facets of yourself, so you don't just feel like you have to just present this one side, because very soon we naturally like to reduce the complexity of an individual down so that we can understand who we're talking to. But it would be a shame if when I'm talking to you, Johnny, the only thing that I would think is autism dialogue or something. I would miss, I think, so much, So luckily we've had then, non-duality conversation also, which is like, then, okay, hold on, where we're bringing these two together, and then all of a sudden you become a fuller person for me, and that's definitely what I'm interested in. How can we do that? How can we look at these various things? And then of course now it's just, how can I do it more fun and creatively, so that if Bohm gave me like a participatory knowing into kind of wholeness, now my kind of buzz is how to creatively do that imaginatively. So imagination has come big in at the moment, how to work with the imagination, moral imagination, if it's going to be a collective imagining together.
Okay.
And how that's
does
still
that
playing out is new. So there's various projects that I'm building at, but I can't say that I bring them all together yet. At the moment, I'm trying to separate them a little bit so I can just see what they all mean. But if there is a thread, it's probably again integrity, wholeness that I'm interested in, even if I'm now trying to separate some of my interests.
Okay, that's fascinating. I've got a couple of thoughts coming up. One is about application, and is there kind of an altruistic end goal that you envisage? And I suppose that speaks again to your vocational side, professional side. Just to clarify that a little bit for listeners, but also
okay. I should, because I'm not really clear. So like the sweet spot for me, of course, is if I can do something that it can bring you in money and sustain your life, and at the same time is also addressing the issues in your life. So in my case, we actually run a psychometric assessment company specializing in integrity assessment. And unfortunately, people, when they think, oh, you're going to just help us assess somebody's integrity, tell me who the good apples and bad apples are, they get confronted with me, who's like, no, that's hardly, I think it's an unbelievably impossible thing to assess integrity. but that doesn't stop me from like saying that we can try that I think that the realizing of your integrity is so key for me personally, but I think for the company and for various ways.
Yeah.
So the company is already that I'm earning my bread on is in one way doing working with integrity for organizations. It's just that the complexity sometimes is that I'm asked to show who's a risk in selection, and I'm trying to shift that because I'm not interested in risk management and risk
Yeah.
profiling. I'm actually interested in integrity, which is a whole other thing. That's so much more, and that includes your personal integrity and how your personal integrity actually has to still integrate with the rest of the planet and harmonize with others to integrate same root or to get to that kind of sense of at least my current feeling and need of integrity is also seeing it as a sense of balance and harmony.
Excellent.
To make sense of the wholeness aspect that is often so if you don't have a balanced sense, you can't really integrate with others. And reason why I'm saying that's important because it is actually who we are. We are, from my perspective, again, we're social animals that actually only make sense as our ability to communicate and relate to one another. I am pretty lost when I'm just left to my own wits, which I wouldn't even know because one would pick up a book, one would, one's so influenced by others that we wouldn't even know, we take it for granted how socially our mind is and culturally our mind is shaped. So yeah, that's then always bigger conversations. And so just to make it a little bit more clear how I do it in organizations, as I said, we could have these psychometric measurements, but what we really want to do with them is look at them as at helping us have better conversations in the organization. So the key would be the foundation of integrity then for me, and realizing your integrity, personal and organizational, would be to have dialogues. It's as simple also as that. And I feel the dialogue is almost the intervention as much as it is the measurement of seeing what's going on. So it's the way that the system gets to see itself. Yet if you do it where people feel seen and validated and accepted for who they are, you already see their integrity realized because they get to show who they are. They don't have to put on some kind of other masks and so forth. The same things you probably also try and do and facilitate in your dialogues. There's a sense of people get to be who they are or show up as they want to be seen even, and then, like you can explore various things in that way. So that's just how I'm trying to practically also do it, which is also an inner need, I guess, to self-accept, self-integrate.
And I think embodying that unfoldment is so important, and it's what makes this kind of work. I feel it's honourable because in a way it's fundamental, almost, I don't know what the word is, metaphysical problem is wholeness and fragmentation. And so we put ourselves out there, certain individuals who have a sense of a duty to bring back the whole, and it's almost paradoxical because we have to go into these fragmented dynamics and mindsets. We have to enter them almost to be able to bring some wholeness, but it's so hard to kind of find the language to say what's literally going on. But working with rather than for takes me back to the thought about education as well, and working with communities and modeling that. I'm learning as much as you, and I think that brings me back to the other point I wanted to make about presence. And I'm wondering, I just want to ask you what's going on for you right now, how you're feeling right now. And this is kind of a coaching question, but how are you feeling right now in this moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've managed to open up a real space. So at the moment, I feel very much in flow. I even my little flu and COVID that I've been struggling with feels gone and lifted, and even the initial awkward negotiating, how do we enter into conversation, which is also always hard, which we had to negotiate. I just all of a sudden felt like in that flow and very present, So just at the moment, this just feels just great to be here with you. Just and like I got for a second also to forget about that we're recording it and all that. So that's beautiful. That's where you want to be. You just want to be present with just this unfolding conversation.
Excellent. And whereabouts are you in the world? Do you want to say a bit about that? How it is for
Yeah,
you?
so I find myself in Windhoek, Namibia. That's in the southwest of the African continent,
Yeah.
and yeah, that was a surprise. Didn't see that one coming, even though I'm originally South African, which is a neighbor just south of Namibia, and yeah, it's it's appealing, and it's shaping already. I guess some of my ideas being here. I guess I romanticize the desert and the dryness, even though we've had beautiful rains over the summer, and it's not been this. Even when we went out to the deserts, it wasn't as deserty and as dry as I imagined.
Yeah.
And
Great.
but still, yeah, that's where I'm finding myself
It
these
sounds
days.
like it's quite an evocative place. Makes me think about something I think we touched upon about traditions. The oral tradition is something that and I mean, I don't know, the cradle of civilization, phrases like that come to mind when I think about Africa. Um, and your future, you mentioned to me in an email about your visions, and I'd be interested to know how all that's looking for the future for you.
Yeah, this is, I think, because of dialogue, which what activate dialogue activated in my life. Funny enough, more than the storytelling did. Storytelling, the way that are consuming it so daily just by sitting in Netflix, it actually feels less participatory, even when you wanted to be the one that makes them, you know. But it feels like, okay, one person gets to make them, the other person gets to enjoy them. And like I said, even the way that I try to make films was very participatory. So, and dialogue then really was activating that approach, so that you're in conversation with nature, you're in conversation with everything around you, and then once that gets a little bit more heightened for you, it's great, because it felt like then my wife got the opportunity to work in Namibia. She's German. We were staying in Germany. I was actually quite feeling quite at home in Germany, and then when Namibia came up, I was like, wow, I had new visions, like you said, like I new ideas was presenting itself, um, and the kind of dialogue work that I was already trying to word in a way suddenly got a new word, and that was alchemy. Now, I'm kind of in hindsight, you can kind of make sense of it. Maybe early 20s, I also loved The Alchemist, the book by Coelho, set, of course, not in the Namib desert, but in the Saharan desert. But the desert was quite key in the romance that I probably felt for the book, you know, and that lingered with me. So that's probably one of the connotations that I'm now, as I'm trying to make sense, why was alchemy all of a sudden coming to me, you know, as a metaphor for the work that I'm trying to do, which I now just currently at this beginning phase is called social alchemy, just to kind of separate it from the actual alchemist work, which I'm very interested in alchemy, but not necessarily to pursue that as too directly. It's more inspired and imaginative and metaphorical, the work. But it is clear to me that it's somehow the desert and the dry and the windy landscape here, and the vastness of the Namibia is the second least populated place on the planet. I think Mongolia is number one. These kind of things started speaking to me, and that's the kind of images that I started getting, like this dialogue festival in the dunes in the desert, you know, like of bringing people together, which then, you know, leads you to discover the actual place. So I actually was on one of our little holiday trips, and we were invited to a research center in the middle of nowhere, and I immediately fell in love with the place and connected with the owners, and this is where you kind of feel like, you know, like you're participating with life, and maybe it's actually talking back, you know, like, so it's you're getting these, you're following some of your fantasies even. And the key is just when I'm now a little bit more lenient and easy for me to go with my fantasies, to say, okay, cool, there's just an important moment to start distinguishing between fantasy and imagination, and then look at all the possibilities, and still from all the possibilities certain facts wants to emerge, and that you can't be blind to those. So I don't want to stay in the realm of fantasy and just imagination, but what they do is open up possibilities for you, but you still will have to make something and choose and actually work with those in a conversational way, and that would be then the ongoing exploration to see if I then end up creating a little festival in the desert in the middle of nowhere in Namibia, or not, or if that fantasy was just allowing me to create a project or a practice which I call social alchemy, or that was maybe just what it's called now, and then the next thing it unfold with the conversation as I work with others and so forth. So I wouldn't know where it's going. And I guess I'm not clinging too much as what you're probably sensing either, but as well.
Yeah.
It is an unfolding conversation, which is lovely because you feel a part of something, and I think that's what I think I've been missing. Like you, as opposed to when you feel like you're spectating everything, feel like a part of something. You're participating. Yeah.
In inspiration, in being inspired, and intentionality comes up for me now.
Oh, nice.
And bringing, I love that, the way you've described that, sorting fantasy from imagination, and then bringing it back for what I think is intentionality. So what agency, even though I'm in this process, immersed in it, how can I be the best agent of change that's occurring as a microcosm of whatever's going on.
What I like about it, which you maybe understand in the dialogue or participatory space, where we're trying to work with others rather than just with myself, because I think in the creative realms I've often noticed how you could be possessed by idea rather than you're possessing all these ideas. So what I'm saying is, like, my current interest in alchemy, and now trying to create something like social alchemy, there's a danger because it's the idea is bigger than me, and many, that it's also evident because many people have played around with alchemy and various other things and found meaning in weird esoteric stuff and whatever. So there's ways that ideas, and artists often know this, they can get very obsessed with their work and with something. So in the sense you can get very possessed by something, and then your intentionality comes for me to key how to make sure that you remain awake and that you have some intentions. But for me, then including in that is maybe how to invite others into this process, so that I'm not being possessed by this idea and then run away with it, and then there's almost no room for anybody else to participate in it. Because if you're really possessed by an idea, whatever anybody else say, you'll immediately feel like, oh, that's not right, and you get very defensive and so on. And then I usually know, okay, you're really possessed by this thing. And what I'm saying is, good thing, bad thing, I don't know, but it's good to be aware of it. Just say, okay, hold on, like, you really are, this thing's got you don't have it. And
great.
And maybe you need to go through that process a little bit because it's busy shaping you, but it's just good to bring that also to awareness, how something can have you, and how beautiful. Others maybe can help you there.
Absolutely, that's beautiful. And I think that brings me round to what's going on with Dialogue Villages unfolding, but it can't happen without others, without the other, without community members, and that's an unfolding process that I'm in, and I totally relate to that. I've had a couple of failed businesses where I've held on too tightly to the vision. I learned the hard way. And now, thankfully, a few years on, and I've got a project where this is, I understand in different ways that this isn't going to happen. Very practically, it's not going to happen, bringing dialogue to the world with just me. But I am a key part of it as well. So it's that constant daily checks, fine-tuning and balancing.
Yeah.
It's the interesting work, the alchemy, I suppose.
Then it's still interesting to listen to that, like, so to because you are clearly also a person that can attune to something and then really see it, maybe even before somebody else. So like take for example this dialogue village that you envision, that you're trying to bring about, and maybe you are tuning in on some things that other people aren't seeing yet. Like so they're not get as excited. I mean, you could almost feel it. Like if they were tuning in what you're sensing here and you're trying to communicate, it would have been massive, or whatever. But it's a process. So how to is going to get us right back to communication. Like especially if you are privileged to your own visions or your own inspiration, how to communicate that. And like we said now, then how not just only to communicate, but that communication is participation. So how to make space, and is it shared vision? I know people speak about it, but I don't know if people are possessed. Are they you sharing a vision? That's one thing, but are they all possessed by the same vision? That's very different, and often not. You could share your vision with other people and think, no, we have a shared vision now, but that's not quite the same thing as if they all of a sudden become possessed by the same idea, because the idea is bigger than you, and it starts moving now in interesting ways in them, which you can recognize, because it's like, well, okay, you've got it now. You really are on fire for this thing because you're.
Interesting. You should use that analogy, the symbol of fire, because I was trying to get a bit of conversation going this morning. Somebody posted something or messaged me, and it was about, I'll tell you, it was about sign language. Somebody posted about sign, and then this has been an ongoing issue about non-verbal communication. So we make wide sweeping assumptions that everybody can speak with words and hear, and I suggested that this person responds to another thing that was posted, and this person said to me, I'm not going somewhere where people are good with words. I think I'll just burst into flames. And I thought that was beautiful, and it's just like, oh my gosh, yeah, there's this whole aspect that we assume that everybody uses words in the same way. Communication is so much more.
Yeah, and how to communicate this when you do feel so passionate then about something, or that it can burn you up, especially if you don't find a way of controlling the fire, like so that somebody would feel like a cool. I could imagine if I want to communicate so intimately with somebody that but I can't do sign language, that I could feel the frustration or the passion that especially if I really feel like I want to communicate and see them and be seen by them and communicate with them, that how that fire could feel like it's getting out of control, like that it can, that you could burn up in their presence because you just failed to connect, or what it is, to connect the energy.
Is there anything else you want to bring? Because I'm conscious that we're about half an hour in, and I think that's a lovely place to end. I've got a feeling that we could do this again, and obviously looking forward to seeing you in the village. And I love saying that, in the village.
In the village, yeah.
And speaking again in different contexts. And but is there anything else you want to say?
No, this is me. I felt like you created a space and I just let rip and just I were ablaze there for a little bit in my ideas, and I just let them fall where they may. And
pleasure's all mine.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. All right. So thanks a lot. Take care.
Yeah, see you in the village then. Yeah, that's true.